Hey there, my name is Wais and I welcome you to this RESTful API crash course using Node and Express. In this course, we will learn how to create RESTful API which can be used for mobile apps, a web application, or any client want to use that API. We will also understand what is a RESTful API and we will learn all the CRUD operations for a RESTful API. We will use Postman, which is a software widely used to test APIs. So if you are interested in learning how to create a RESTful API using Node and Express, then click on that Buy Now button and I see you guys in the course. Hey guys, welcome to your first video of this section. In this video, we will take a look at the standard tools that we will require throughout this course. So the first one we're going to look at is node.js, which is basically a server of our application. And we will use it along with express.js to build our web server API endpoints. So if you go to express.js.com, this is what we're going to use to build all the web server API endpoints. And we will explore that in a few videos. Next, MongoDB. So this is basically the database we will use to persist our data. And finally, if you go to babel.js.io, so basically this is what we're going to use. So we can basically write ES6 syntax and Babel will transpile our code for us to use. We don't have to worry about the proper syntax. So with these tools, we'll be able to build our API. Last one is an IDE. You're going to write a code and you need a smarter text editor. VS Code is a great choice. It is used by a lot of developers. It's free and open source, built by Microsoft. So we'll use VS Code throughout this course as our IDE. Because we're not using a front end in this course, and this course is all about backend, we need to be able to test and use API endpoints we will create in this course. This is where the Postman will be used to allow us to get the data. We can post new items, update or delete them. So go to getpostman.com. Once you get there, you can see it's available for Windows, Linux, Mac. Click on the download button for any specific platform to start downloading Postman. So at the bottom left, you can see I'm downloading Postman, but I'm going to cancel the download because I've already downloaded and installed in my machine. So here we have a Postman. I'm going to restart Postman so I could show you what you see when you start the Postman for the first time. Usually it will show you the login page where you can log in using Google or with your email. Right now, when I start the Postman, it shows me this welcome page. Now here in the Postman, I'm going to expand that. And here you can see we have some CRUD operations: get, post, put, patch, delete, so on. Now I'm going to show you how you can use Postman by testing a fake JSON API. Let's go to the browser and search for fake JSON API. It will take you to JSON placeholder, which is a fake JSON API which you can use to test Postman. I'm going to copy that URL and I'm going to go back to Postman and paste it there. Now I'm going to simply click on next, send, and here you go. We can see Postman returned us data. Now Postman is a great application to test our APIs, so I'll be using this throughout the course. In this video, we're going to go and install Node.js. Also, we're going to install Express. So right now I'm at node.js.org. So LTS stands for long-term supported. So you got to make sure you download LTS version. Next, you gotta download VS Code. I've already downloaded and installed VS Code, so please go ahead, download if you're using Windows or Mac or Linux, and then open it up. So this is what you see when you start VS Code for the first time. I'm gonna go to File Explorer, and I'm gonna go and create a directory, and I will open that directory in VS Code. Let's click on File menu and click on Open Folder. Navigate to that folder, double click, and then click on Select Folder. Next, we want to go and open Terminal. So click on Terminal and then click on New Terminal. So we can see a terminal. On the terminal, we want to first initialize our repository using npm init command. So we have a question called, what is your package name? We say REST API. Version, we'll leave that as 1.0.0. In description, I'll write creating REST API. I'll leave endpoint as index.js. Don't worry about git repository. Keyword, you can type REST API. Author, I'll just say REST course. Next, for license, we type MIT and press enter. Next, you can see we have a package.json file. If I click on package.json file, you see some information. Now at this stage, our repository is initialized. Now we can go and install Express. So on the terminal, type this command npm install express --save. Now you're installing Express using npm install command, but what is this --save does? It will basically download Express and save its version in our package.json file. So later on, we can simply say npm install, and whatever is available in package.json dependency section, it will go and automatically install those packages. Now I'm going to go to node module folder, and I'm going to show you that we have Express installed now. Now at this stage, we have successfully initialized our repository. Also, we have successfully installed Express. In this video, we are going to install MongoDB. So if you go to Google and search for MongoDB, you will come to this website, mongodb.com. Click on that and you'll come to this page. Now, if you're on a Windows, you can download the installer by going to Get MongoDB. I'm going to click on that, and we have three options: Cloud, Server, and Tools. We want to install MongoDB Server. So we have two options: MongoDB Community Server and MongoDB Enterprise Server. So obviously, we're going to use MongoDB Community version. Next, you're going to select the version. The current release version is 4.0.4, and I'm going to select that. We have an operating system to select. So right now I'm on Windows, so I'll select Windows 64-bit. And then we have two types of packages for Windows, zip and MSI. Now if you take a look at Mac OS, you will have package named TGZ. But if you are on a Mac, I will have an article after this video which you can go through to know how to install MongoDB on Linux and Mac OS. I'm going to click on download, and it's going to start downloading a package. So here we have a MongoDB. I'm going to cancel out because I've already downloaded it to save time. So I'll just go to my download folder, and here I have MongoDB package. I'm going to double click on that, and then I'm going to click on next, accept term and conditions, next, click on complete, and install MongoDB as a service. Let's click on next. Now we have another option, install MongoDB Compass. We'll talk about this later, but let's keep it checked. Click on next, let's click on install, and it's going to ask your permission, and I'm going to click on yes, and that's it. So it's copying file. So MongoDB is installed. Now let's go and start this up. So by default, if I go to C drive, program files, we have a folder MongoDB. We have a folder named server 4.0 bin. We want to run this file mongod. So let's click on that, and there you go. So now it has basically started a server on 27017. Welcome back. In this section of the course, we are going to start learning how we can build a RESTful API using Node and express.js. So let's get started. Before we actually start building our backend API, let's cover some quick basic concept about a RESTful API. So what is a RESTful API? How are we going to build our application around it? Keep in mind that this is a quick overview of what is a RESTful API. If you need a deeper understanding of RESTful API, please take a look at the document in the next video. So we use a series of calls like get, post, put, and delete with an HTML address to transact with our backend and its data. So when a front-end client, it can be a website, a mobile, which needs to do transaction with the backend, it makes a call like, for example, get, when an API endpoint that looks like an HTML URL and the API responds a success or failure with data. So, for example, if we use get to pull the data from a backend, we can do the post to push the data to the backend as well. Also, sometimes we will need to update the data. We can use update. And also, if sometimes you will need to delete some data from the backend API, we can use delete. So yeah, this is a quick overview of REST API. Okay, so now the fun part starts. We have successfully installed Express. As you can see in your package.json, we have Express version 4.16.4. Also, take a look at the main key, which is set to as index.js. So now we're going to go and create a file, index.js. And in this file, I'm going to create a basic server using express.js. So let's start by defining a variable named express. We set that equal to require, and we want to require express. Next, we're going to create another variable, and instead of using var, I'll use const because we're not going to change that. So let's name it app is equal to express. Now let's create a const for port. We define port is equal to, we set that equal to 3000. Next, let's use app variable, and we're going to call a method get. Now we define a first parameter as our URL, and then the second would be a function which takes two parameters, request and response. In the function body, we simply get response and we use a method on it, send. Inside this method, I will write a message saying node and express server is running. So we want to define that node and express server is running on the port. Now I could simply define here port 3000, but let's use ES6 backticks to write a variable inside of a string. So I change the single quotes to backticks, and then we define a variable by writing a $sign and a curly braces, and we define a variable there, which is our port variable. In the port variable, we defined 3000. So what if we want to grab the port which is actually on our server? To get that, we can use node.js process.env.port. If there is no port, then it will use port 3000. Now let's go down and write a method on app.listen, and that will take a port which will be basically 3000. So second parameter would be a function. So let's write that. In the function body, we just log the same message. We write backticks and we say your server is running on port, and we use the variable port. So at this stage, our index.js file is ready to run a server using express.js. Now I can go to terminal and type node space index.js. That will run a server, but we want to use a server which restart itself if I make any change. For that, we go to terminal and we install npm install --save -dev nodemon. Now in dev dependency, you can see we have successfully installed nodemon version 1.18.7. Now let's go and take a look at the main index.js file. So if we do npm start, it should go and start this script which we're writing right now. So we write a script start, we say nodemon ./index.js file. So basically, if on the terminal, if we go and say npm run start, it will go and start the nodemon and it will run this index.js file. So let's do that now. So right now you can see our server is running on port 3000. Now let's go and test it. So I'm going to go and open Chrome browser, and here we want to go to localhost 3000, and here you can see we're getting a message node and express server is running on port 3000. So let me go and make a change to our index.js file and see if our server restarts automatically. So I'm going to remove node and server, and I'm going to press Command S or Control S on Windows. And now let's go and refresh the page, and you can see that we have a server running with our new message. So, congratulations, you have successfully configured Express server, and your server is actually listening for requests now. In the next video, let's take a look at how we can configure the structure of our project. Before we start adding endpoints to our server, let's set up the folder structure for our project. I personally put everything in the source folder and then start branching out the folders and files I will use for servers, my controllers, models, and routes. So let's get to it. So the first thing I want you to do is to use a technique, whatever your IDE is providing. If you're using VS Code, you can follow along with me. I'm going to go and click on that plus button on the folder, which will create me a source folder. Next, I'm going to create another folder in the source folder called controllers. This is where I'll put all my controllers to this folder. So we're basically folding MVC pattern. So model, view, controller. We have a model folder. This is where we are going to create our schema, and this is where we are going to connect to MongoDB and so on and so forth. So let's go ahead and create one last folder inside our source folder, and this one we will call routes. And routes are going to be where we create our API endpoints. So let's go ahead and create a file in each of those folders. I will name these files CRM controllers and CRM model and CRM routes in each of these folders. Alright, so we have all three files in each of the folder. In the next video, let's start working on routing endpoints. Welcome back. In this video, we're going to talk about routing. So routing refers to determining how an application responds to a client request to a particular endpoint, which can be a URI or a path or a specific HTTP request method, such as get, post, and so on. Each route can have one or more handler function, which are executed when the route is matched. So now let's take a look at how we define a route. So in the last few videos, we've been looking at this app.get method. So now app is an instance of Express, and we have a method on that called get. So basically, this is a route. So we're writing this slash. That means that if we go to localhost port 3000 or whatever the port number we are using, it will go to this route. So for example, if I change this to hello, I'm going to save it, and I'm going to go to terminal, and let's go and start the server. We'll type npm run start. I'm going to open the browser. Now let's go to localhost 3000. Localhost 3000, and now I can see I have an issue here. It cannot get slash. So if I go to slash hello, and now take a look at, we got this server is running for port 3000. So that means this route is working. So now I'm going to go and remove this, and I'm going to remove this code, and I'm going to move this to crm routes.js file. But first, before we remove this code to crm routes.js file, let's take a look at how we can create a different routes with different methods. So app.post is a method, and I can say, hey, this is a post method, which takes the first parameter as your path. And then second is a request object. So we do a request, and then we have a response object. And then we have a couple more parameters, but let's not go to those for now. And here we have this post method. So I'm just going to use this same line of code. I'm going to paste it here, and I'm going to say this is a post method. So just say this is the post method. I'm just going to go and copy this and paste one more time. And I'm going to change this to, let's just say put. And we change this post to delete. Now change this to put, and also I'm going to change this to delete. I'm going to save the file. And now this time we're going to test this using Postman. So we'll go open the Postman, and here I have this route 3000. I'm going to send this, and now I get the response server is running for port 3000. That's fine. But if we change the method to post, and this time it's supposed to go to this method because this is a post method and it's returning this is the post method. Let's take a look. So I'm going to send this time, and now we get back this is the post method. Same, if I change that to put, I send, I get this is the put method. If I change that to delete, I'll go get this is a delete method. So our route is basically working. Now we're going to make these routes available in routes.js file, which basically make our application modular. So I'm just going to cut all of these routes, and I'm just going to go to CRM routes.js, and here I'm going to paste these routes. Now here, first of all, we want to create a function which we can export. So we'll do a const, and I'll say route is equal to, we add a parameter app, and here I'm just going to use this ES6. So here we'll just go and move all of these inside the function. Just going to get rid of this. Now what we're doing here is basically a route chaining. So instead of just writing this app get, post, app, put, app, delete, I would like to define app route, and then we use the get, post, and put method as a route chaining. So to do that, we can define app.route. We can call the route method on app, and here I'll just type slash. Okay, so the next we want to have this get method. So let me just remove app from here. We're going to remove app from here. We can remove app from here, but we'll leave the dot actually. That would just actually make this run. So we'll remove this from delete. Now another thing, because we're doing a route chaining, we don't need to specify this path anymore. The path is already defined on the top, which is this. So I'll just go and change, actually remove all of these paths. We don't need those. All right, now I'm going to go and let me just clear this out. We need to fix this because we don't have a variable port here. So I'm just gonna go and remove this, and this time I'm gonna say this is the get method. All right, I'm gonna save the file, and we don't see any error here, but we got this error. So declaration of statement is expected. Okay, this is because we had this semicolon here. So I'm just going to remove that semicolon there. I'm going to save the file again. Now we want to basically export this. So I'll use this JavaScript thing, module.export is equal to route. So now you should be able to use these routes outside this file. So we'll go back to index.js file, and first of all, I create a constant. I'll just say routes is equal to require, and I'm going to use source slash routes slash CRM. Okay, so now basically we have to do is use routes and pass in app. That's pretty much, that's it. I'm gonna save the file, and we're gonna go to Postman. Let's see if our API is still working. So I'll send the get request first, and then there you go, we get this is a get method. Next, test post, we get this is the post method. We can check put, it's a put method. So we successfully moved our routes to crmroutes.json file using route chaining. Also, we imported those routes into index.js file. That was the basics of routing in Express. In the next video, we're going to take a look at how we can use middlewares. In this video, we're going to talk about middleware functions. Express is a routing and middleware web framework that has a minimal functionality of its own. An Express application is essentially a series of middleware functions. Middleware functions are functions that have access to request object and a response object, and the next middleware function in the application request cycle. The next middleware function is commonly denoted by named next. What can middleware function do for you? It can execute any code, make changes to the request and response object, end the request response cycle, call the next middleware function in the stack. Now let's go to the VS Code and take a look at some of the examples. We are back to VS Code where we left off in the last video. Now I'm going to remove routes, which basically using the routes from the different file, we're going to start writing a function of middlewares right in our index.js file. So let's start by typing app.use and then call a function inside this. It's going to have three parameters: request, response, and next. In the function body, I will actually log the time. So let's type console.log and let's just type a string time and say date.now. Now date is a plain JavaScript object that what I'm using. This is a type of application level middleware. Binding application level middleware to an instance of an app object by using app.use and app.method function, where method is the HTTP method of the request that the middleware function handles, such as get, put, or post in lowercase. This example shows a middleware function with no mount path. The function is executed every time the app receives a request. Let's take a look at the demo. I'm going to open the browser, and here you can see our server is running with that function, and if I refresh the browser, you see we can see the time of the server in the console. Let's take a look at an example of loading a series of middleware function at a mount point. With the mount point path, it illustrates a middleware substack that prints request info for any type of HTTP request to the user. So here I'm defining app.get. We do go to the route with slash and then call a function which has three parameters: request, response, next. And in the first middleware function, I'm just gonna check what is a method. So I'll just type request method and then we call method property on request object. And now if we want to use the next middleware function and call it next, we're gonna have to use this next and we call that function. So once we call this function, we are able to go and define another middleware function. So we go down after the curly brace, we add a comma, and we call a next function, which will have three parameters: request, response, and next. So in the next middleware function, I call another console log, and here I will define a request original URL. I call a method on request object called original URL. Now we can just run this function, but remember it is a get request. For that, we're gonna use another middleware function by using next, and then we go define another function which will have three parameters: request, response, and a next. And here in this function body, I will just return the response to the browser. So I'll say response.send method, and then we call request as a string inside that, and we can say request was successful. Quick explanation about this function again. So we have a get request, we have a first middleware function which is logging a request method. We call the next function to be able to execute the next middleware function, and the second one we're logging original URL, and the last middleware function will just return the response. Now I'm gonna comment out this app.use because it's just gonna hang the browser because it's not returning anything, and it's gonna call itself every time we make a request. So let's just comment it out. Now let's go and save the file, and we're gonna refresh the browser, and you will see that we get the response back. Request was successful, and on the console we logging the first middleware function, which logs method and then original URL. Now all of our middleware functions are working. Remember, middleware function is just a function which has access to your request and response object. Welcome back. In this section of the course, we will take a look at CRUD operations. This course is not a full course on MongoDB, which is a database we're going to be using in this section of the course. So we'll briefly go over the basics and concept around using MongoDB so you have a good idea what we're doing here. A MongoDB database is a big object containing collections. Each collection could be like a contextual item. For example, context for database we will create. Then inside the collection we have document which are contacts themselves. So my contact information will be in a document and your will be in your document, and we'll have another document for another contact. And then inside each document, we have the data for each contact, such as address, telephone, emails. A document looks like JSON object with key value pair, approach, or array of data, where those Mongos fade into this. Well, Mongos will allow us to get a schema of a collection and predefine what each value takes as a type. For example, the first name of a contact will be a string. We will cover this in more detail soon. In the next video, we will set up MongoDB for our CRUD operations. Welcome back everybody. In this video, we are going to set up MongoDB. We're going to start the server. We're going to make sure that we have connection to that server using a GUI software. So let's get started. So first of all, what we want to do is we want to make sure that we have a MongoDB installed. If you haven't installed MongoDB, then please go to mongodb.com, click on Get MongoDB, and after that, you're going to select a server, and then select a community server, select your operating system, your package, and download that. I've already downloaded and installed MongoDB. Also, we had a separate video in the first section of the course where I've shown you how you install MongoDB. Now, the MongoDB is installed in this drive on my computer. C, program files, MongoDB server, and version is 4.0 and bin. So we're going to go and start our server first. So we need to basically execute this file, mongod. Now before we can execute this file, we need to have a folder set up where MongoDB will store the data. So if I go to C drive, here I have this data folder and I have this DB folder. So in this folder, MongoDB will store the files. We can specifically define this folder, but also this is a default folder structure that MongoDB uses. So we'll go to MongoDB program files, and we're going to go to MongoDB server for bin. Now I'm going to run command prompt, and I'm going to run it with administrator. To run that file, you need to open command prompt as an administrator. So we will just copy this link. I'm going to copy this and I'm going to cd and paste that. Okay. Now I could start Mongo directly from File Explorer, but I prefer using command prompt. So here we'll type mongo.exe file, and then we want to define a path. So I'll do -- and db path is equal to c : and then we do data, and then we type db. Now when I press enter, it is going to start MongoDB. So there you go. So we have a data directory there. Also, we have successfully started our MongoDB on port 27017. Let's go to the browser and open robomongo.org. They have two versions of the software, Studio 3T and RoboMongo. So we're gonna download this RoboMongo, and this is a UI, a GUI program for MongoDB. We can connect to our MongoDB database and we can view the database using this Robo3T software. So we'll click on download Robo3T, download exe file, and then it's going to start downloading. It's not a big file, it's about 11.9 megabytes. Double click on it and let's just install that. There you go, we got Robo3T running. Now when you start this first time, you will see 4 options: create, edit, remove, and clone. I'm going to click on create. You get another window where you type the name of your connection. I'll type Mongo. Let's do a local host and a port, which is 27017. Click on save and click on connect. Now on the top left, you can see you have successfully connected to MongoDB server running on your local host with the port 27017. Now this is the cool software we'll be using to view our MongoDB collections, documents. Alright, I'll see you guys in the next video. In this video, we are going to connect to our database using the code. First, you're going to make sure that your server is running. You can see on the right terminal, we have a MongoDB server running on port 27017. Also, I'm going to go and open a Robo3T and I'm going to connect to that localhost MongoDB so I can see that it is running and I can connect to it. Now let's go to index.js file. So to connect to MongoDB, we're going to install a package called Mongoose. Mongoose basically provides a straightforward schema-based solution to model your application data, and it includes built-in typecasting, validation, query, building business logic, and more, and help us to connect to MongoDB very, very easily. Now in the package.json, you can see we have a package installed. Now let's get to coding. We create a const variable, we name it Mongoose. We set that equal to require, and we require a Mongoose because we just installed it. Next, we are going to go and use a Mongoose instance and then call a method on it, connect. Now this takes a parameter, so we'll put that parameter in a string, MongoDB / localhost and / the name of your database. So right now we don't have a database test. We can create it by just giving a name here. So Mongoose will automatically create a database called test for us. Now let's go and run our index.js file using nodemon. Down in the terminal, you can see our server is running on port 3000. We received a warning saying deprecation warning, current URL string parser is deprecated. So to fix that, we're going to define a value, use new URL parser, and we'll set that equal to true. So let's go and do that. I'm going to save the file, which restarts the server automatically. Back to the code. Now we're going to define a model on Mongoose. So we start by defining a const variable called cat, and we say mongoose.model, and then in a function, first parameter would be a string, which is the name of your collection model, and then what type of data it's gonna have. So we say name, which will be a string. Now we can create a new instance of that newly created Mongoose model, which is a cat. So I'll say const. Let's just name it Kitty. Now we create a new instance from cat, and now we pass in an object with the name key and its value. So type name, colon, and the value can be Mimi. Now we want to use that Kitty, and then we're going to call a method on it called save. And then this returns a promise, so we use the then keyword, and then we say in the first parameter, we say response, and then in a function body, we simply log the response. And also we can say, hey, console log, and then do mu. Save the file, and you will see server restarts automatically, and then you can see an object in a response, which has an ID, name, and a V. So let's go to Robo3T and verify that. Now let's go to refresh, just click on the arrow and expand it again. And now you can see we have a database named test, and inside that we have a collection cats. and cat has one document within the collection. So as you can see that our database is basically connected to our code, and our code created a new database and also created a collection named cat and also created a document within the cat collection. Welcome back. In this video, we're going to talk about schemas. Everything in Mongo starts with a schema. Each schema maps to a MongoDB collection and defines the shape of a document within that collection. Let's go to crm file, and here we are going to require mongoose first. So we create a variable mongoose, we set that equal to require, and we require a package called mongoose. After that, we will create a variable called schema, and we will call a method on mongoose variable. So we say schema is equal to mongoose.schema. Next, we're going to use that schema variable, and we are going to define a schema now for a block schema. So we'll set the variable name as block schema. We set that equal to new schema. We're going to pass in an object to this new schema. Basically, the object will be defining a key and a type of value that key can store. So here we'll type title and we set the type to string. So I'm going to finish this object and write all the properties of that schema. So let's define author and set the type to string, and then body and set the type to string. Let's talk about schema now. Each key in our code block schema defines a property in our document which will cost to its associated schema type. For example, we have defined a property title which will be cost to a string schema type. So there are a few primitive schema types like string, number, date. For the full list of schema types, go to Mongoose docs and I'll drop a link in the next article. So schemas not only define the structure of a document and casting the property, they also define a document instance, method, static model methods, compound indices, and document lifecycle called middleware. To use our schema definition, we need to convert our block schema into a model so we can work with. To do so, we pass it into mongoose.model, and then we pass in the model name that we want to define and then the schema we want to use for that. So in this next video, let's create a model and let's create a post endpoint and use the postman to post a block from postman, and then let's store that into MongoDB database. Welcome back. In this video, we are going to use block schema and we are going to create a model from it, and then we create a post request using our postman software, and then we make a call to our endpoint which will be /new block. Now, to be able to use this CRM model.js file, we have to export it. So let's type module.export is equal to block schema. Let's go to index.js file. Let's create a post endpoint. So let's type app.post, and the first parameter would be a path, which is /new block. And then the second parameter is a function, which has two parameters, request and response. Now in the body, we will write over a new blog using that schema and a model, and then for the data we use the request.body. First, let's take a look at robot3t. Here I'm not connected to any database. Let's go and connect to Mongo. Let's click on connect, and now here you can see we don't have a test database, which we basically have in the code using Mongoose package. Okay, so now the goal is to import that schema, create a model from that, and then use the post endpoint to be able to listen for a request. So when the request comes in, we take that request.body and then use that data and then post that to our database. Let's go and block schema, and we then require. So now we're going to go and create a model from that schema. So we type const block model mongoose.model, and then here first we type the name of the model, which is block, we set here, and then the second parameter would be what is the schema for that model. So we use block schema. Now, the next thing would be going to the post request, and then we're creating a new blog, and then we create a new instance of a blog model. So let's type new blog model, and then we use the data from request object. We say request.body. Now we call a save function on the blog. So let's go and type that. Now we're using request object and a body key, so we need to parse that. So let's go to the terminal and install a package named body parser. So we type npm install body parser -- save. Now -- save will save that into a package.json file. So here we have a body parser. Let's go to index.js file. Now we can successfully parse the body. So let's go and import body parser first. I have a body parser now. And next we're going to use that. So let's use the app object, and then we use that by calling the use method, and we pass in body parser dot JSON method on it. The reason why we're using JSON because we are expecting a JSON data from our request. So this is how we can enable body parsing. The next thing we want to enable is XWW form URL encoded. So let's type app.use. We use the body parser, we call a method on it URL encoded, which will take an object and the key would be extended, and we can set that to true. So now we can use XWW form URL encoded in our request object. So it's good to go now. So let's go and use the body of the request, and we call the save function on our blog. So let's type blog.save. So it will take a callback function which will have two parameters. The first one is an error, and then the blog model itself. In the function body, we are going to check if there is an error. Then we can send response.send, and we can just send the error back. And if there is no error, then we can send response.json because it's a JSON object. Then we can send that back. So we say response.json, and then set that put block as a parameter into that function. Now we're going to start the server by calling nodemon index.js file. Now our server is listening on port 3000. Let's open the Postman, and then here you can see I have a request localhost / new blog, and then we can use this wwx form, and then we set the keys title, author, and body, and here we got the response back. Now it's time for us to go and have a look at the database. So we bring in the robot3t, and I'm going to refresh that by right-clicking on Mongo and then refresh. Now we have a database named test, we have a collection, we have a blogs, and then we have a document which has 4 keys: ID, title, author, and body. So we're successfully able to post the data to our API endpoint / new blog. So we wrote a code to store the data coming from our request and store that in our MongoDB database. Welcome back. In this video, we are going to create an endpoint which will get all the objects from our database. So as you guys can see, we have an endpoint / new blog to store a new blog. We need a GET request to get all the blocks. So we create a app.get endpoint with /get blocks as a first parameter, and we just call a second parameter as a function, which we haven't created yet, but we're going to create now. So let get all blocks is equal to a function. So it will take 2 parameters in a function, request and response, and then we will use our blog model from Mongo's model, and then we call a function on it called find, and we pass in as the first parameter as an empty object because we need to get everything is in database. So second is a function with error and a blog. So whatever the data we get back from this query, it will be stored in blogs parameter. So similar before, we check if there is an error, then we can send the error back. If it's not an error, then we can send JSON from blogs. So let's go and test it on Postman. Now in the Postman, let's go and type a URL, which is localhost, and make sure it's a GET request. So type localhost :3000/get blogs. So here you can see we got 2 blogs in that. We got 2 objects. Now we're going to go and create a new request, and we send that to new blog, and we're going to make it a post request. We go and change that to body, and then here we make sure it's form URL encoded data, and we type title as, for example, get all test, and then author I will just name that as, let's just say, mongoose. And then the body, we can just write a simple text there, and then we can store another object. Now, once we send the request, it will store an object and it gives us a response back. Yes, it is stored. Now here I'm going to go back to get request and click on send. And now this time we got 3 objects back from this query. There you go. So our get request is retrieving all the objects from our database. Welcome back. In this video, we are going to learn how we can serve static files from our REST API. For example, you have a folder named public, and you have a bunch of images in that folder which you want to serve. Express let us do that very easily and with a little bit of code. So here you notice I have copied 2 images. Now we're going to serve them from, let's just say from URL. So what we can do is I'm going to move this to public, and I'm going to say click move, and then move this file as well to public as well. Now here where we're listing the port, I'm just going to type app.use, and inside this function I'm going to use express.static, and then here is basically a root or a part of the folder where your static files are. So I'll type public. Okay, next we have the public there. Then I'm just going to save this file, which will restart the server automatically. Now let's go to the browser and let's take a look at if we can serve these files in the browser. So our server is running on localhost port 3000. So here I'll simply type the image name. So I'll type img1.jpg, press enter, and there you go. We are successfully serving an image file from our REST API. So here, if I change this 1 to 2, press enter, and we have a second image getting served from our REST API. So alright, I will talk to you guys in the next video.